Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I want to sit down and discuss with you how I budget for 2024. So if you're interested, do keep on watching. So a couple of you have been requesting for me to do a budgeting video. So I thought since that's something that I truly enjoy doing every start of the year, why not share it with you in like a video as well. So here we are discussing my budget for 2024 and how I'm going about budgeting for this year. I'm not sure if some of you have seen my previous video on like luxury budgeting and budgeting in general, so if you have not seen that, I'm going to link it up over here. But in that video, I think I actually spoke about how I actually key in numbers that I want to budget for a particular category in my life, or rather a particular spending category. So I think that's actually quite helpful. So if you want to watch that, I will highly suggest and recommend that. But in this video, I thought I'll go in depth and show you how I budget for the year ahead. So I do have myself an Excel spreadsheet every year, and I just copy and paste and save as a new spreadsheet for the new year. So this year the spreadsheet is just called Amelia 2024 budget. So in there I key in all the numbers and I do like a yearly review. I see the numbers that I have for my previous year, which categories I've stuck to the budget, which categories I've exceeded out of the budget, and then I kind of like rework my numbers a little bit as well. Another thing to note is that I'm self-employed. Because I'm self-employed, there are certain numbers that I kind of have to like estimate as well, such as my income. So that's something to bear in mind when you're looking at this video and this list as well. But I think in a generic sense, it should not veer too much for people who are not self-employed as well, because I think the categories that I've listed down are generally quite generic. So I have broken down my expenses this year into like 7 different categories. Previously, I have my fixed expense like somewhere that I do not include in this list, but I thought it would be really helpful for me to just include my fixed expense into this entire Excel sheet as well. So that's what I have done for myself this year, or rather I kind of like figured that out like mid of last year, so I already started implementing that last year. So I'm just bringing it forward into this year as well. So the first item that's on my list is actually fixed expense. So when I say fixed expense, they are actually monies that I do not have a choice. It goes out every single month and year, and they are mainly to do with monies that I put for investments, monies that I set aside for insurance. So those are considered my fixed expense. If you do have rent involved, then it should fall under this category as well, or like things like mortgage, so it will fall under this category as well. At the moment, I do not have any rental and mortgage to foot, so they are not in this category, but I feel like sometime in this year it will definitely go into this list as well. So currently I just have my insurance, I have my investments, I have things that I just purposely set aside monies for every single month and just not touch. So those fall under my fixed expense. And I would tell you right now that it's a huge chunk of my income. So basically my fixed expense take up about 50% of my income. I set that aside and I just do not touch it because they are my go-to in future. They are my retirement nest bucket that I do not ever touch. So those are my fixed expense, and yeah, I'm just quite glad that I've set aside money. So sometimes when I spend on myself, I try not to feel so guilty about it because I know that I'm actually setting aside a lot of money for the future. But I'm trying to cut down on the amounts that I spend on myself as well, so that I can increase this 50% to like 60 or 70% even. So those are like my fixed expense, and I do not touch them if I can help it, you know. So the next category is actually personal spending. So for personal spending, I've broken it down into different subcategories. So I have things like eating out, I have shopping, I also have gifts, I have groceries, I have self-care, and I also have parental allowance inside personal spending. I mean, technically I can put parental allowance in a separate category, but I just lumped it into like personal expenses, so I don't have too many categories to look about it. So yes, these are all the items that's in my personal spending, and it's the one that I track the most often because it deals with my everyday life. Every time I spend on something, I actually put it into like a budget tracker that I use, and then I just put it into this category as well. So my Excel sheet actually pays from January all the way to December. So every end of the month or start of the month, I actually go through my list and just key in the numbers into this list. I have set out a yearly budget. So for the next few categories, I feel like I will not be expressing how much I've set a budget for. But given that I've already told you my fixed expense is about 50% of my income, I think you just have like a generic idea of how much I'm spending on the rest. So I do take a look at some of these categories time and time again. I feel like the one thing that I want to kind of cull down is actually shopping. So when I talk about shopping in this list, I'm not talking about luxury spending because I have a separate category for luxury spending. So shopping in this list will be things like if I were to go Zara or like COS to buy a dress, buy clothes especially, they will fall under this list. So because this year I'm trying to cut down on like buying clothes, I feel like I can like move this number down quite a bit. So that is what I intend to do. For self-care, I generally fixed it as like $100 every single month, because I tend to go for like my monthly massages and I try to go for it at least twice a week. I don't purposely put a number in these categories as well. I do put a note beside it, like I want to spend like $100 for self-care and not exceed that, so that I'm in check for the rest of the other items in this list as well. So that is for my personal expenses and something that I will track on a daily basis. The next category is actually subscriptions. I would say that I do not have a lot of subscriptions. So currently I only have Spotify, I have Apple iCloud, and then recently last year I added on Epidemic Sound because I just want to make my vlogs seem a little bit nicer, and I'm intending to do like monthly vlogs of my everyday life, so I want to include that as well. I would say it's not the cheapest thing on the list, definitely, but it's just something that I want to include so that I improve the quality of my videos as well, which I feel like will go a long way. So yes, those are the current 3 items on my subscription list. The next category that I'm coming into is business. So it's not something that most people do have on their list, but I'm just going to name you the items that are on this list as well. So first of all, I have tech devices. Tech devices could be things like your hard disk, things that I need to constantly buy because like I use up my hard disk space for like storing all these videos as well. So that is definitely on that list. I think last year I actually bought a new camera, portion of which I managed to claim back from insurance. So I actually just input it accordingly because someone actually bumped into me and then my camera fell onto the floor and smashed. So I managed to claim a bit back from like insurance, not the entire amount of it but some of it. So I used that towards the other camera that I bought. And yeah, so that is tech devices. I also have gifts as well. I'm not sure why I'm repeating that in both categories of like personal and business. Maybe I should just consolidate and put it under business because most of the time the gifts that I buy are for clients, but mainly because I feel like for personal, for people in my life, maybe like friends and family, then it will fall under that category. So yes. And then I do have prints because sometimes I do print cards as well. I do have like my personalized like business card that I use because I tend to write cards all the time and like notes all the time. So I actually customize my own card so that every single time I need to like write things, it has my name on it and everything already. So I use those cards and I feel like maybe I can create a few more this year as well. And then also on this list, I do have the amounts that I include and pay my personal assistant. So that goes into this whole business category as well. So that kind of sums up my business category in general. For those of you who are new here, my name is Amelia and I do videos on luxury and lifestyle. So if you enjoy these kind of videos, do consider subscribing, click on the notification bell so that you don't miss any of my future videos. And then the next one I have is actually travel. So for travel this year, I feel like I don't want to spend too much on travel because last year I kind of went a little bit overboard. I still went on 4 trips, but 3 of those trips are really long and I spent quite a bit on these 3 trips. So I went to Bangkok in January last year for like Blackpink concert, and then in May I brought my parents to Japan and it's like a fully paid trip. I paid for their expenses mostly. And then in July I kind of went to Europe for Tomorrowland, and then I went to Paris after that and Amsterdam. And then I think in September, yes, the trip was kind of like paid for in terms of flight, but I did spend quite a bit on that trip as well. So I feel like this year maybe I'm just going to cut down and cull it down a little and go to nearby places that you don't have to spend so much on, like places like Bintan, places like Bali, and yeah, maybe like closer places. And if I were to do like one big trip, then I might just do one trip to Europe, but I feel like that's not really in the plans this year. So yeah, I feel like maybe I'll just stick to Asia this year as well. For last year, I actually broke down into the 4 trips as well, so I put each of these trips into each subcategory in this travel category as well. So yes, this is what I intend to do for this year. And the next category I have is actually for the car. So for people who own cars, it's quite standard. You have things like petrol, things like cash card top up, parking. When I say parking, this is when I use the app, like the parking app, because sometimes when I parallel park at like outdoor spaces and then like I use the app to pay for it, it's not when I use the cash card, so they are different. So I kind of like separate it out into like 2 different subcategories as well. And then I also have car wash and others such as public transport, because sometimes I do still take public transport. I will park at a certain place and then take public transport, just like a couple of stops. So I do make use of public transport as well sometimes. So that goes into this category. And then last but not least, I have the most awaited luxury category. I'm not going to announce how much I'm putting into this category, but I feel like in order to be fair to myself as well, I wanted it as a realistic sum, because if I put a number that's too unrealistic, then it's most definitely that I'm going to exceed this amount, which is kind of silly as well, because what I'm trying to do this year is to try and stick to this amount. So I have placed a good amount of monies in this list, and if I were to stick to my wish list this year, which I've already done a video on, then I think more or less I will be able to achieve and stick to this goal of this amount that I've already set out for myself. So yes, I feel like that is all that I have kind of like budget for myself this year. I do have a separate tab on this Excel sheet that is for income. So for income, I am trying to increase my income streams as well. And every time I increase and add on an income stream, then I can include it into a subcategory into this list as well, because I'm self-employed and I do other stuff outside of like my normal day-to-day job as well. So they all appear on this list. So those are my income, and in general this income should be more than my expenses. So I do tend to like look here and there and see if I'm able to like edit the numbers here and there as well. So I do have a sheet that is for income. So for people who are self-employed or you have outside businesses that is drawing you an income, then I would highly suggest that you put an extra tab into your Excel sheet charting all these numbers as well, because I feel like it's very useful and helpful for you. I also have a tab in my budget Excel that kind of lists down all my goals for the new year, which is like financial goals mainly. I want to save up this amount for, let's say, my Cali 25. I actually input a number inside, and then I also input a number for the DJoy bag as well. And I've also input numbers for housing as well, because that's something that I'm working towards. So I put in a specific number that I want to work towards to and set aside. So those fall under goals. And then I have an entire list for like assets as well, just to track how much assets I have at the moment. So things like my CPF numbers, OA, SA and MA. And then I also have savings accounts. Like I have various different savings accounts. So I have accounts with like DBS, I have accounts with OCBC, UOB. So I actually track those amounts as well in my savings accounts. And I also make use of the asset column to track my investments, because those are actually assets as well. They are monies that are in my asset category, because you know they are investments and monies for the future, so they fall under this column as well. And then I have amount stating my total assets and total liabilities, and like it states my net worth as well at the moment. So I feel like this is also something I do for my clients all the time. We go through assets, we go through like income and expenses. So this is just something that I do for myself, and I kind of like tweak it to my liking. And then on a separate tab, I also have my retirement chart sheet. because retirement is like a huge thing for me and I'm trying to work towards it as well. So for all my clients, I actually do a retirement timeline. I also do it for myself and I include it in like one of the tabs in this Excel sheet as well to kind of like track how far I am away to my goal, and something that I can remind myself just by looking at this entire Excel sheet. And yeah, I think that is something that is very useful. So you might want to like just include it inside your Excel sheet as well, you know. Either that, or if you want someone to help you to do up an Excel sheet like this, then you can look for me. I'm more than willing to meet you and like talk about finances as well. So I've come to the end of this video. I truly hope that this video has been helpful for you. If you are looking to sit down and like plan your budget for this year, I feel like it's an excellent way to start the new year. The reason why I enjoy budgeting and like looking at a whole year in review is because I'm just a planner by nature. I like to see things and like have something to look forward to. So for example, if you're someone in a day job and like you look forward to your next holiday, it's kind of like the same feeling that I get. Like I like looking forward towards something and like knowing that I have something to work towards too. It gives me a sense of purpose in life. So I feel like it's very helpful if you start off your new year just by setting some goals for yourself and like budgeting, and it will bring you a long way this year. If you like this video, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. I'll love it if you subscribe to the channel for more, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!